What is meant by source? What is voltage source and what is current source? How to transform voltage source to current source and current source to voltage source? In this session, we are going to discuss. A source is a device which converts mechanical energy or chemical energy, that means battery voltage, or chemical or thermal, some other form of energy, into electrical energy. Electrical energy, if it converts, it is called as source. There are so many types of sources available in electrical network. One of that is voltage source, another one is current source. Voltage source and current source. Second one is current source. These are the two types: voltage source and current source. Voltage source and current source both are active elements. A voltage source has forcing the function of EMF, whereas the current source has it forcing the function of current. A current source produces a current. A voltage source produces a voltage. Voltage source and current source, two types of sources we have. And voltage sources, we have ideal voltage source and practical voltage source. Ideal voltage source in the sense resistance will be 0, whereas practical voltage source resistance will not be 0. Current sources also two types. One is ideal current source, the source which have infinite resistance, internal resistance is infinite, then this source is known as ideal current source. Practical current source means it has internal resistance. The current and voltage sources are further categorized into two types: ideal and practical. Voltage resistance or 0, those are called as ideal voltage sources, whereas practical voltage source have internal resistance. Ideal voltage source, practically it is not possible. Due to internal resistance, voltage drop takes place and this causes terminal voltage to reduce. The smaller is the internal resistance or for the voltage source. Voltage source having internal resistance is very small. The symbolic representation you can see here, voltage source. The symbolic representation of voltage source, plus minus voltage across the terminals A and B. It is a voltage source. This is the graphical representation of ideal voltage source. The voltage remains constant whatever be the current drawn by the equipment or load. The voltage will be constant. Suppose I or time in hours, if the changes also current, but voltage remains constant. Ideal voltage source it is. But practical voltage source, how it will be? Whenever current drawn by the load or R increases, the voltage will be drops. That is the practically possible. Ideal voltage source will not be obtained practically, but for learning purpose only, ideal voltage sources we are assuming as internal resistance is 0. Ideal means 0. Every voltage source is represented by the meter or plus or minus voltage source and a small internal resistance. Due to this resistance, a voltage drop will be takes place, or according to load current. If the load current increases, the voltage drop will be takes place. That means I increases, voltage drop will be takes place. That is practical source. Practical source, voltage drop will be takes place because of resistance, current will flow. Due to that, voltage drop will be takes place in the practical voltage source. Current source. Current sources are further categorized as ideal and practical current source. Ideal and practical. Ideal means ideal current source is two-terminal active element which supplies the same current to any load resistance connected across terminal. Irrespective of load, it produces same current or constant current will be given by current source. It is important to keep in mind that current supplied by the current source is independent of voltage of source terminals, that has infinite resistance. It has ideal current source has infinite resistance, that we have to remember, infinite resistance. The diagram represents Ideal current source, it is represented by a current indicated by the direction upwards. The ideal current source will be represented by a line is indicated on arrow mark ampere ideal current source. The current is indicated on y-axis and voltage will be maintained constant whatever the current increases or decreases. How to convert a voltage source or current source? A current source, how to convert to voltage source? A voltage source, how to convert into a current source? That is called source conversion. Conversion of source conversion. Source conversion is the technique that converts current source into voltage source to current source. First of all, we have to know what is voltage source, what is current source. Voltage source have a series resistance, very small resistance, a series resistance Rs for every voltage source. A voltage source is indicated by plus and minus. A voltage source having series resistance. A voltage source having plus and minus terminals and voltage is maintained constant, that is ideal, but actual voltage source having some resistance or a voltage source is represented by a resistance connected in series, or you can connect here also the R. But what is about current source? A current source, ideal current source having internal resistance infinite, I like that you can represent ideal. But practical current source having parallel resistance RP or P or RS, the source resistance RS. To convert voltage source to current source, what we have to do? What is the current flowing in this due to this voltage source is given by I equal to V by R. Is equal to V by Rs. V by Rs. That Is and Rs, if you replace, then it is a source conversion, voltage source to current source. Similar way, what is Is? Suppose a voltage source is like this. Assume that a voltage source is like this. The source conversion is the process or conversion technique that converts voltage source to current source is called source conversion. Similar way, reciprocal, the conversion of current source into voltage source is called source conversion from current source to voltage source. These source conversion techniques are used for network reduction techniques. So especially in Norton's theorem, Thevenin's theorem, we are using source reduction techniques. To convert voltage source into current source, what is the current drawn by from the voltage source that we have to calculate? First Is, after that Is, how to calculate V by Rs, what is the internal resistance. Similar way, the voltage source to be converted into current source by taking this Is as a current source and Rs is in parallel, that is known as Rp, parallel resistance we have to connect. Suppose, for example, if you consider how to convert voltage source to current source, let us take one example. For example, consider a voltage source 10 volts having resistance, internal resistance having 0.5 ohm and load resistance is 5 ohm. For this circuit, convert the voltage source into current source. How to convert? First, the Vs is 10 volts, supply voltage is 10 volts and Rs, supply source resistance or source voltage is 10 volts, source resistance is 0.5 ohm. First we have to calculate the current Is to convert into current source. Is equal to V by Rs. Is equal to V by Rs. V is 10 by 0.5, that equal to 20 volts, 20 amperes. The current through 5 ohms resistance also 20 amperes. Now what is the current drawn by the total current drawn by the source? What is the total current drawn by the source is Rs equal to, first we have to calculate Rs. Rs equal to 5 plus 0.5 ohm. Rs equal to 5 plus 0.5 ohm. We have to calculate Rs equal to 5 plus 0.5 ohm is the total resistance. Now 5.05 we have to calculate the current. The same current we have to represent as Is, but parallel resistance is Rs. Rs is 5.5 is the total resistance. Now we connected RL equal to 5 ohm. RL equal to 5 ohm. Like that we can convert a RP having resistance 5.05 resistance and load resistance is 5 ohm. For example, consider a voltage source 8 volts having internal resistance Rs, internal resistance or 2 ohm. Load resistance is 5 ohm. What is the current through 5 ohms resistance? How to calculate Is? Is is the current through 5 ohms resistance. Is is total resistance Rs equal to 5 plus 2 ohm. 5 plus 2 is 7 ohm. Now Is is given by Is. How to calculate Is? Is equal to V by Rs or Vs by Rs. That is 8 by 7 ohm. 8 by 7. 8 by 7 ohm is the Is. 8 by 7 ampere will flow. 8 by 7 ampere will flow. 8 by 7 it is 8 by 7 ampere. Now how to convert the same into current source? If Is is the current source, Is equal to 8 by 7 ampere, 8 by 7, and a parallel resistance is Rs is 7 ohm. Like that we can convert a current source or voltage source into current source, in vice versa also. If you want to convert entire current source into voltage source, similar way you can draw reciprocal. First we have to represent Is you know 8 by 7, Rs is 7. 8 by 7 into 7, 8 by 7 into 7, 8 amps is the Is. Is equal to Vs equal to Is into Rs. Is into Rs. This Vs equal to Is into Rs. That is 8 volts. And parallel resistance is series resistance. We have to represent as the total resistance, or we can represent parallel resistance is 2 ohm. In similar manner we can convert a voltage source is having internal resistance or in series, whereas current source parallel resistance, the equivalent resistance, parallel resistance we have to represent.